Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma rabbi zidni ilma. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Ameen. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. The topic of this lecture is translations and sketches of trigonometric functions. An important advice for me and for everyone. We must be good to others. I discussed translations in details in my first lecture of transformations of functions. When this translation vector applies onto this equation, then we get this equation. This is the equation of the resulting graph. Since the x component of translation vector is positive, therefore we have negative sign here. So the signs of the x component and this both are opposite. What if we had minus a here? Then we had to write plus a here. So these signs are always opposite. Similarly, if this vector applies onto this equation, then we get this equation. This is the equation of the resulting graph. 90 degrees is positive, so we have negative 90 degree here. And this vector means you have to shift normal tan graph 90 degrees to the right. Similarly, when this vector applies onto this equation, then we get this equation. Theta minus 90 and plus 1 is here. This is combined translation. Well, this is the normal tan x graph for this domain. Normal tan graph starts from origin. But because of this negative domain, we have to sketch this part as well. So when we applies this vector onto this normal tan x equation, then we get this equation. This translation vector means you have to shift this tan graph 90 degrees to the right. So when you will shift this graph 90 degrees to the right, you will get this graph. See, this graph has shifted 90 degrees to the right. When you will shift this graph 90 degrees to the right, you will get this one. But since the domain is still 270, that is why I did not draw this one. So if the domain is still 360 degrees, for example, if this domain is still 360, then you have to sketch this part as well. This part is here. So basically we shifted this graph 90 degrees to the right. This question is from June 21, paper 11. You have to observe this graph carefully. The normal tan graph starts from origin. And this graph is not starting from origin. This graph is starting from this point. See, this is the first part of the graph of normal tan x with respect to normal tan x. So this graph is starting from pi by 4. And this graph is also starting from 1. This point has coordinates pi by 4 and 1. So according to this point, we have this translation vector pi by 4 and 1. And this is the equation of the graph a tan x minus b plus c. And we have to find the values of a, b and c. So when we will apply this vector, when we will substitute pi by 4 here and c1 here, we'll get this equation. A tan x minus pi by 4 plus 1. So we have got the values of b and c. Well, there is another way to get the value of c. This is the mean line of this graph. And you know, this mean line is known as c, and this value is 1. So c is 1. You have done this in trigonometry, that the axis of the graph is known as c, and c is 1. So you can get the value of c in two ways, either from this translation vector or from this sketch. You can use any method. For this unknown constant, you have to substitute any point of the curve into tan x graph. But make sure you substitute that point which will not make this tan 0. You cannot substitute this point here, because if you will substitute pi by 4 comma 1 here, this is 1 and this is pi by 4, then pi by 4 minus pi by 4 will be 0 and tan 0 will be 0. So a will be eliminated. So make sure you substitute that point which will not convert tan x to 0. So you can substitute this point. So by substituting pi by 2 comma 3 into this equation, we have 3a tan pi by 2 minus 3 plus 1. 3 is equal to a tan, this is pi by 4. I just need to copy this pi by 4 here. So tan pi by 2 minus pi by 4 will become tan pi by 4, and tan pi by 4 is 1. Hence the value of a is 2. So we have found the values of all the unknown constants. A 2, c is 1, by comparing these two equations, you can have the values of c and b is pi by 4. So always observe the curve carefully to get this value of constant. For this value you need to observe the curve carefully. You can get these values from the curve, from the sketch. I mean, you can get c from the graph, you can get a by substituting any point of the graph into this equation. But to get this value, you have to observe the curve carefully. I hope this lecture will help you to understand translations and trigonometry sketches. Allah Hafiz.